Hey everyone, you are listening to Life in Motion, a podcast where I, Heather George, talk to my best friend, Jamie Job, about life, the ups, the downs, and everything in between, including the stuff we're not supposed to talk about. Let's get started. You look like you just came from working out.
I did just come from working halfway through my physical therapy. I had hip surgery and I just halfway through, for the record, it's not an old lady surgery. It's just an everybody's surgery.
Reconstructive
surgery. It's not. Oh my word. It's not. No, but listen, so I'm in physical therapy. I'm halfway through. It's going quite well. And the other day I was headed to physical therapy actually. So I dropped my kids off at school. I should probably preface with I just rolled out of bed because
that's how you do things. You spend as much time in your bed as possible.
Why? This is like the theme of our season. Oh my goodness. But anyway, I just rolled out of bed.
With Jamie Joe.
Oh my goodness. That could be so scandalous. Okay. So anyway, I roll out of bed. I did not have PJs on, but I did look like I just rolled out of bed. So I'm talking to HR. They give me the answer I need. And then my friend Julie, who works, says, "Oh, hey, how's physical therapy going?" I'm like, "Oh, she is so sweet." And I'm like, "It's fine." And then I go, "Julie, I got to tell you something." She's like, "What?" And I said, "I think the physical therapist is flirting with me." And she's like, "Oh my gosh." So everybody, by now there's like 4 people all circled around to hear the story about the physical therapist flirting with me. And I was like, you guys, it's like really, I feel weird. And so I've been saying things like, after today's workout, I'm going to go to lunch with my husband, Brian, my husband. And I just keep on finding ways to drop Brian's name into the conversation. I'm like, I got to start wearing my ring. And I'm just really concerned.
The last thing you want to happen is to be labeled a cougar.
Who said he was younger than me?
Well,
the physical therapist.
I'm assuming.
Oh my word.
Never mind.
He is. Okay, so anyway. Julie just kind of interrupts me real quick and she said, "Hold on a second." She said, "Do you go to physical therapy like that?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Like that." And she kind of motions, like circle motion across my body, this whole thing. And I said, "Yeah, I guess I do." And she goes, "He is not flirting with you." So I gasped and hit the floor and I looked at myself in the mirror and it's true. There's no way he's not flirting with me. So.
I think if you have a really good physical therapist, you're going to feel like you're best friends with them, or they are flirting with you or whatever, because I had to go to physical therapy for my hip as well.
And he also flirted with you?
I never thought he was flirting with me, but I was starting to think we might be really good friends.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And then this is funny. This is embarrassing. I happened to see him one day.
Oh, I know this story. Keep going.
Outside of physical therapy. We were Whit and I were on our way to the airport. There's a detour, and we had to drive through a city street to get to the highway to get to the airport. So we were driving through this neighborhood. And there is my physical therapist walking his dog on a walk with his wife. And I just, like, my crazy comes out.
Oh, no.
Whit, oh my gosh, that's Chris. Stop the car. And Whit pulls over. And he's like, what is happening? And I roll down my window.
Oh, my word.
And I'm like, Chris, hey, it's me. Hi, how are you? And he just has this look on his face of
very
horror.
Scared.
Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening here. And I try to collect myself. I'm like, hey, it's me, Heather. This is my husband, Whit. Hi.
Oh my goodness. And Whit was horrified, I'm sure.
And he just keeps walking and gives us the slow wave, like, yeah, okay, crazy lady. And keeps going. And Whit is just...
Don't ever do that again.
Shut up and leave me out of your crazy.
Oh my goodness. We've got to switch gears from all the physical therapists in the world that may or may not flirt with us and move on, because today on this episode, it's a Q&A. So if you've been with us all season, we've been inviting you to leave us voicemails. Come on, the most pressing questions you've got. And we haven't heard what they are. So we would like to know.
We've been saving them. So
what are the most pressing questions you have? I heard that the voicemail box is like overflowing with 4. And so we're just going to jump right in and get those going. And just a quick side note, it's not too late. We're going to do another Q&A at the end of the season. depending on how this one goes. So anyway, what do we need to do to listen to that one? You're going to pull it up, or?
Sure, I can do that.
Hey, Heather and JJ. This is Crystal Qualls. I was actually just going to call and tell you guys, thank you for doing this for us. I mean, it's always fun. It's real. And I just want to say thank you. I like the fellowship. I like getting connected more with the community and just everybody caring so much. I did want to say that from your last podcast that I learned a lot about learning to walk in freedom. But it requires me to go back in my past and face some things that have either broken me, and I bring God in my journey with me, so I'm able to let go of those things so I can move on and walk in freedom with him. I just know not every day has to be perfect, but there's something perfect in every day. So I want to thank you girls for doing this, because it's always enlightening. It's a good time. Always going to have a laugh. And I know with Heather, we'll probably have a tear. All right. Love you, girls.
Oh, Crystal, we love you too.
We do love you. I just have to say, Crystal goes to our church, so we see Crystal on a regular basis. And that girl walking in freedom is really beautiful to see. So thanks for saying that, Crystal. Thanks for calling it. Thanks for taking the time. Some people laugh when we're like, leave us a voicemail, but it's meaningful.
I love that you took us seriously.
I know. Because let's be honest, there's days we get in this studio and we look at each other and like, we don't have anything to say. And what are we doing this for? And who signed us up for this? Although we signed ourselves up. But anyway, thanks. That was awesome.
And we do hope that all of our listeners feel like they're included in the conversation. And the things that we say, we hope that they hear themselves in it as well.
It is good. And we do welcome you into our lives. So let's take a listen to the next one.
Okay.
Hi, girls. This is Shay Rowlett. I was wondering if maybe at some point you guys could discuss at what age is it appropriate for the boys and the girls to kind of start hanging out together on Saturdays, or picking up from school and hanging out until church. I personally have a son that is getting into this, and it's just a really scary territory. And then another factor that weighs in is if I was raised differently than Brock, Connor's dad, and if his thoughts are differently, which can cause some major frustration among the parents that are trying to come up with a solution on what's a good age. So anywho, just a thought, throwing it out there. If that's something that you guys would like to talk about or not, I think would appreciate hearing about it. Thanks, girls. Bye-bye.
Heather, somebody thinks we're a parenting professional. This is fantastic. This is our moment to really shine.
Right.
So let's come
Don't
up with
let them know that we're completely winging it ourselves.
I think you just told them. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to?
You go ahead and go first.
Oh, my goodness. Number one, we're not professionals at anything. So you'll have to take everything we say with a grain of salt. But I did have a youth pastor say this to me a couple of years ago, and I thought, wow, that's insightful and maybe different than I ever thought about it before. I was asking for my own family, do you think my son is old enough to have a girlfriend? Because he'd been asking for a few years. Mom, I want a girlfriend. And I kept saying, you're not ready for a girlfriend. Are you kidding me? What does it mean to have a girlfriend? He's like, well, I want to walk in the halls at school with her. And I'm just like, that's a friend. That's a friend, and you can be friends with people. But the youth pastor said, listen, if he is hardwired like to desire that kind of relationship this young, you might consider letting him have that girlfriend while you can help guide him. He still was at an age where he told me all the things he was thinking and wondering, and I'd never thought about it that way. So I let the slack out a little bit on him so that he could ask questions and we could kind of navigate it together. So I am a proponent of not waiting too long to let kids have some relational experiences. I would say hang out together that's the actual question. I think we're talking about middle school kids. And man, I don't know if I would do it outside of a group setting, to be honest. I do think, how is a boy ever going to know how to interact with a girl if they don't have any practice? And if it can be supervised practice, man, start while they're young enough where that feels like a privilege to them, versus I would never go on a date with my parents because I'm a sophomore in high school or whatever. Man, let them have some experience, but I don't know that I would ever let them be by themselves. We don't do electronics or phones or anything in bedrooms or game rooms or anything. So everything that at my house that kids are allowed to do, unless they're sneaking around, and that's a whole nother ballgame that perhaps happens, I don't know. But it's all done with family, interacting with family, discussing things with family. So I don't know if I'm a huge don't do it at all person, but I would say, what can you do while you're close enough? And then I would also say, where's your network and community of friends that are raising kids at the same age as you? You probably need people a little bit further beyond to ask some questions to. But who are the people that you can talk about these things to? I had a friend from my small group text me recently and say, is your kid dating so-and-so? And I was like, I don't think so. Why? Is he? And she just knew the family of the girl. And that's good to know who are your kids hanging out with and what do you know about them. I don't mean gossip and talking about things that you don't need to talk about, but it is helpful to be doing life with people and asking people. I ask Heather questions all the time, because if I just did things the way I wanted to do them, I might not even be giving my kids the best experience. I've got my own way of thinking and doing things that don't always resonate with my kids. So I don't know if that was a roundabout answer or not, but what can you and your spouse, or you and your the person you're co-parenting with, what can you agree on so that your kids see you united? And where can you let them start growing up a little bit and keeping them safe?
I think it's a good idea for them to figure out how to be in a relationship, how to be friends with somebody. One thing that we caution our kids on all the time is, what's it going to look like when you break up?
Oh, man.
And especially in school, then are you dating somebody that's in the same circle of friends? And then when you break up, what's that going to be like? Is that where you want to take that relationship to, or do you just want to practice being friends, figuring out how to navigate all that?
Man, it's so much easier to just like someone than to have to break up with someone. Yeah. And to answer your rhetorical question that you asked your kids, what's it going to look like? The answer is very dramatic. Just so you know, that's personal.
Because we've experienced whole friend groups breaking up because a couple in the friend group breaks up. For their age, even talking about marriage to a 17-year-old, like, you should be dating somebody for marriage, like considering marriage is a whole lot of pressure to put on somebody. Joke. But to talk to your kids about, how do you navigate relationships with people from other families, and how do they how do they serve their family meals? Does the mom make all the food and the dad lays on the couch, or does everybody help together fixing the dinner and setting the table? What does that look like in your house and look like in their house? These are all things that'll get you ready for marriage.
I didn't get married until I was 26. I had some relationships, but I didn't have any serious boyfriends or anything like that. And Brian said to me not too long into my marriage, you really should have had some boyfriends to learn some of this before.
You needed a little bit more practice before marriage.
I had no brothers. I had no close relationships with people of the opposite sex. And so, there was a lot of learning that could have happened just in friendships. Yeah. So be careful. Do it in a safe way. Know what your boundaries and your expectations are on the front end, and clearly communicate with your kid and your spouse or what have you, and make sure everybody's on the same page, because it could go really south. Yeah. But I think it could be very helpful too. Mm-hmm. So anyway, okay, I think this is the last question for today. Heather, let's go ahead.
Okay.
Hi, Heather and Jamie. My question is, sorry. We've heard Whit's side of how he struggled with porn. we haven't heard your side of how you have handled that and recovered, or how you felt through all of it, and how you, sorry, I've got a baby crying, how you managed that, how you walked through that with him. And I just kind of wanted to see the wife's perspective. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Heather, this is definitely your question to answer, but I will toss something in before you answer, something that probably none of our listeners would know. The answer to this question is actually what brought us to the podcast table to begin with. God stirred something in your heart that we often hear a male pastor's perspective on a lot of things. And there's another perspective as well that doesn't diminish their voice, but just adds a different perspective and maybe a more well-rounded. So what an amazing question. I'm sure that's a hard question to leave on voicemail, but your question is the reason we launched a podcast. So Heather, what is your side of Whit's story?
This is a difficult question to answer because every one of our journeys is different, although similar.
Sure.
But, Whit, his struggle with pornography, and if you don't know what we're talking about, in the show notes will be a link to a message that Whit shared at our church. Pretty detailed, his story and struggle with pornography and his walk into freedom. So for me, I don't think I knew what I was getting myself into when Whit told me that he had struggle with pornography. The hardest part about his struggle was the emotional fallout. Because once he confessed that he had this struggle, and he talked about in his message white knuckling through it. So it wasn't like a consistent habit once we got married where he was looking at porn every single night or whatever. But there were temptations. There were times that he did look at it. For him, he had to, get to a place where he was bringing people into his life to help him walk through it. There were different steps that he took to find freedom. We never went to counseling about it. It probably would have helped. That's another part of our story where I remember driving in the car one time when we had one baby in an argument about something stupid, probably. And I was just like, you're not hearing me. You don't understand what I'm saying. We need a mediator in this. We need somebody to help us with this. And he flat out refused. Like, are you talking about counseling? Because I am not doing that. Because at that time, counseling was available. We had pastoral counseling at the church, but his position at the church, he just felt like it would be unacceptable for me as an employee of the church to get counseling. That's admitting that there's something wrong with my life.
Right.
So we never went to counseling or anything for it. And Whit says this in his message, that it wasn't pursuing freedom from pornography that brought him freedom. It was pursuing Christ. And I would say that the same is true for me. There was so much emotional fallout, volatile arguments that were fueled not necessarily by Whit looking at pornography, but the underlying idol in that was selfish desire, selfish gain, self-centered, self-service, that you are the one that's in charge of your life, that you are the one that's to be served through your life. And so I am one of the avenues to serve Whit I don't think he would have ever fully realized that in the moment that we were living in the time. But for sure, now in hindsight, he says that. And you have to remember at the same time, I had my own issues that, as we talked about in last week's episode, if you listen to that, and dealing with the grief of my mother and not having an anchor in my life, I'm still in this place of grief and figuring out a whole bunch of stuff for myself. My side of the story is the same as Whit's, but my own. That my recovery from the fallout of his porn addiction was me following Christ.
Yeah.
Because I was not the answer to Whit's porn addiction.
Or the cause.
I think instinctively, never put myself in a position to be his accountability partner.
Sure.
I would ask him occasionally how you're doing, or, whatever, but I wasn't the person that I was like, okay, what have you been looking at this week? And blah, blah, blah. He signed up for Covenant Eyes, and I wasn't on that, whatever email alerts or however that works. Right. I was never one of the people on his email account to know that he had looked at explicit material. If you are in a situation where your husband is struggling with pornography and wants freedom, you're not the answer to the key to his freedom. And a better sexual relationship is not the freedom that he needs, or you being something to fulfill that desire is not the key to what your husband or partner needs to be free from pornography. I think in some ways it's an individual journey of pursuing Christ. And in each one of us pursuing Christ, we have found intimacy together that's been very healing. But anyway, is that helpful?
It is helpful. There's a couple of things that you said that I'm going to ask you a couple of questions on, but I'm going to lead with this. I don't want to get into any graphic details about your personal sex life, but am I correct in assuming or guessing that you weren't in a dangerous situation in your sex life?
No.
Okay, I just want to be certain. I mean, we're not talking about a situation where your spouse, partner, whatever, is trying to get you to do things that you're wildly uncomfortable with, or you feel unsafe. We're not talking about a situation like that at all. That's a completely different situation in which you need to get help and likely need to step out of that situation at least for a season. But I'm just talking somebody who's like, I do want to honor you. I do want to put you first, but man, I don't know if I want to deal with this issue over here, this porn issue. What might your advice be?
So I'm going to preface this by saying right now, my answer is directed at people that are Christ followers. If you are just listening to this podcast and that's not your situation, you're welcome to listen along, but you might have a different set of answers than what I'm about to say. First and foremost, for you have to pursue Christ. Your pursuit cannot be a godly marriage. Your pursuit cannot be a husband that is the spiritual leader in your home.
Ouch, you may have just stepped on some toes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
But it has to be Christ.
Yeah.
And that has to be your foundation for all. Because if your pursuit is a godly marriage, or you're determined to have a husband that is a spiritual leader in your home, you'll never get there by pursuing that, because your motives will always be, I've got to fix him. He's not doing it right. This is wrong with him. And
you probably should have said it's unlikely you'll ever get there. There's probably some random person listening that going, "Oh no, it worked for me."
Yeah.
It's
unlikely to get there. It's unlikely that you're going to get there.
And the reason, Heather, I believe the reason is because God, the God of the universe, Jesus wants a relationship with us. And if at any point along the way he becomes a means to an end, like we're using him to get what we want, that's a really crummy relationship.
Yeah.
I do believe there's some people wholeheartedly seeking him for a relationship with him, and they're getting prayers answered that maybe somebody else wouldn't get. It's just, it's not very complex. It's very simple. But I just think once we're using God as a means to an end, you're in dangerous territory.
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying is those are great desires.
They are. They're wonderful desires. They're wonderful prayers.
Jesus.
They're wonderful prayers. But it's very difficult to be in a situation with somebody that you can't control and you're desperate to control them.
Yeah.
First and foremost, you have to put your relationship with Christ first. And the bedrock of that relationship.
That's a funny word in light of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't help myself sometimes.
And the bedrock of that relationship has to be your complete trust and knowledge and understanding that you are loved beyond measure for who you are by a God that has created you, that has ordained every day of your life, that is not surprised by where you're at right now, but that you are following him wholeheartedly, obedient to him for whatever he asks you to do. So that is first and foremost. And then secondly, if I would invite people into your life to give you wise counsel.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a marriage with somebody that is not pursuing the same things as you, that doesn't want the freedom, that doesn't want true intimacy with their spouse and with God, then there's a whole different path to take there.
Yeah.
Whit, for all of his trying, he didn't want to be addicted to porn. He didn't want porn to be a part of his life. He wasn't always successful in that. His attempt and his approach at that might have been wrong. It's not, don't want to say wrong, but I'm talking about the white knuckling.
Sure.
Because trying to do it by yourself, trying to keep it hidden while you're battling that. Nothing that is kept in darkness will ever be overcome. You have to bring light into it to overcome it. You can't have victory in darkness. So anyway, does that answer your question, or is there more for me to say there?
No, I think that's good. And I think you've adequately answered the caller's question. What was your side of the story? It's made me wonder, it's made my wheels start spinning and wondering more things about relationships and things that we could talk about, because like you mentioned, this is your story and your side of your marriage story, but there's a million different people with a million different stories. And so the one thing that we all have in common is pursuit of Jesus is the answer.
Because going on in Whit's life was not only the porn, and like I said, it's the underlying idol of service to self. So we're seeing this manifested in his desire for cars. Like he was just like, oh, got to have that car. Here's a fancy sports car. Got to have that car, to the expense of our family. And so maybe he's not looking at porn anymore, or very much, or hardly at all, or whatever, but he's still feeding himself, serving himself through other avenues.
Are you saying that the turnaround in your marriage was not necessarily tied to porn recovery, but was tied to heart change, overall heart change?
Completely, 100%.
Okay.
Because I don't know when. I can't remember when. I'd have to ask Whit to see if we can figure it out. But so he stopped looking at porn at some point. I can't remember. But we're still experiencing trouble in our marriage. Like, stopping porn did not fix our marriage.
Okay.
And it was 10 years really before I can put a marker in my marriage of he's different, I'm different, we're different, our family is different.
Heather, this is interesting. I sat down for counseling one time and the counselor said, I want to make sure you understand there is a risk and a reward with counseling. And before we get started, I want to be clear about this. And so we're like, oh my gosh, okay, tell me what it is. And she said, the reward is we can likely get to the root of the problem you came in for. I said, that's a good reward because that is what I would be paying for. And she said, the risk is when you start dealing with one issue, you typically find 20 in return. And she said, we can work on all of them. I just don't want you coming in thinking if we solve this one thing, your life is just miraculously amazing. But instead, if we dig into this one thing, just brace yourself. We might find 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 more, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like it was kind of a similar thing. Like, the porn addiction has been dealt with, but we still have to figure out the root heart issue to find freedom. Yeah. Were you needing life transformation as well? We often hear Whit's story, like, Whit had this amazing transformation. Did you also experience transformation in this season, or was that one-sided?
No, I think Whit's, one thing that I've told Whit many times is, one thing that I love about him, especially the position that he's in, is that his sin was so blatantly external that
you love that about him.
What I love it about Jesus, that now in the position that he's in, I can't tell you how many people come up to him and just say, you're different.
Yeah.
I mean, if people have been out of his life, moved away, came back to town or something, they're like, who is this person? Because I don't even recognize you. And I've told him many times, you're not the man I married. And so his sin and his issues were blatantly external. I would say that for many years in our marriage, I was the good one. I was, the
older brother and the prodigal son?
Well, to a certain extent. I mean, no.
I was not that person.
I mean, it goes, both brothers and the prodigal son have their issues. And I think maybe Whit and I flip-flopped those issues a little bit because I had a lot of external sin before we got married.
Okay.
Where, yes, I made a bad choice. I sinned.
It was
let's take it beyond made a bad choice. I sinned. I chose to sin here externally. Whit, leading up to our time, except for the pornography, which even that was secret, he did not cuss, drink, smoke, all of that, those external things.
Okay, so I see what you're saying.
He would say, before he realized that he had this issue in his heart, he was very religious and looked down on people. So before we got married, I would say I'm the prodigal son.
Okay. But
then once we got married, I am the good one. And I am doing everything right, and I am serving, and I'm whatever I'm doing. I got it all together to a certain extent.
So the question was, did you have to experience heart change?
I did have to experience heart change. Still experiencing heart change.
Yeah.
Still
Isn't that the truth?
Letting the Lord lead me, because you're never at an end point. Like, that's taken care of. The rest of it's all figured out.
Wouldn't that be nice? But it's just not how life is. Wouldn't it be nice? I say that, but kind of jokingly, because the moment you have it all figured out and everything runs smoothly, do you really need a savior?
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. And I don't ever want to not be dependent on a savior.
All of this was probably a long-winded, rambling answer. I'm sure that I churned up things that you should call in and ask your follow-up questions. But let me summarize with this. For you as a spouse of somebody that is dealing with a pornography addiction, first and foremost, you have to follow Christ and I'm going to say, and take care of yourself.
That's good.
If your husband is pursuing pornography, they're not really taking care of you. So pursue Christ, take care of yourself. Secondly, you're going to need to reach out to a counselor, or you're going to need a close circle of friends that can support you and walk with you, especially if your spouse is not interested in freedom,
Sure.
because this uncovers a whole bunch of other questions that you will have to walk out. You'll have to make some decisions on.
Heather, it's probably worth repeating, or maybe saying for the first time, when we agreed to doing this podcast, what our heart was not that we would have answers for people, because we're certainly not experts, but that we were willing to sit down together and weekly talk about things that aren't being talked about, to bring things into the light, to kind of push that proverbial line, the line in the sand where people say, don't cross that line, just push it back a little bit and start the conversation. So I hope as you submit your questions on our voicemail, as you think about the things that we say, I hope that it stirs in you the desire for more freedom, desire for more answers, desire for more voices speaking into your life to lead you into the truth. Because our goal is just to get it out and get it on the table so that we can start looking at it, discussing it, and walking towards freedom. So, man, we want to help, but our ultimate goal is just to begin the conversation.
And for you to take the next step, whatever that might be for you.
Absolutely.
And we're happy to keep on talking about this. So
we'll just keep on talking about it.
Send us your questions.
You might think, did they ever quite answer the question? Possibly not. But the goal is that we would keep talking about it and normalizing some of these things that have been swept under the rug, and they need to come out for the sake of all of us. Heather, what's one thing you're going to do this week that brings you and the people around you joy?
I'm going to tell you what I did last night that brought me joy. Because
okay, go for it. It feels very okay. You're making me nervous, but go ahead.
Making you nervous?
Well, we're just talking about the bedrock of things, and then you're like, "Let me tell you what I did last night." I don't. We just talked about all these
in the gutter. Oh my goodness!
What did you do?
Filthy.
What did you do?
What did I do? I'll tell you what I did. I was sitting at home.
See, I'm still nervous.
Doing a puzzle.
I'm doing a puzzle right now too,
and I could just hear one of my sons is playing video games, his favorite thing to do, and hang out with his friends online. Another son is playing music in his room, repeating the same song over and over again, but doing what he loves. My girls are playing together. Whit was sitting there reading it, and I'm just like, Lord, you're so good. How amazing that I just have this moment where everyone is here in my home. Everyone is doing what they love, what brings them joy.
Yeah.
And we had a fried chicken dinner and then a dance party as we cleaned up.
A dance party.
Yeah, it was fun.
Wow.
So it was a fun night.
A dance party. Okay. What am I going to do that brings me joy? It's the most wonderful time of the year. You're going to roll your eyes, but it is baseball season. It has begun. And by has begun, I mean, we're practicing. My kids are practicing, and first games are next week if weather cooperates. And I love baseball season for a couple of reasons. I love watching my kids do something they love. I love the pace of a baseball game because it's actually pretty slow. And I want to be there to support my kids, but it's just an hour or two at each game where you're just kind of sitting and relaxing and enjoying being outside, enjoying your kids, enjoying the camaraderie of the other families. And it's baseball season, so I'm going to go to a baseball game.
Woo-hoo.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We are going to do another Q&A at the end of the season. So the number for our voicemail is in the show notes. We would love to hear from you, and we will bring your topic into the light and start the discussion on whatever it is that you find the most pressing. So we can't wait to hear from you. Have a great week.
Adios.
If you have enjoyed our podcast today, you should subscribe to Life in Motion. You can find us anywhere you download podcasts. You can also get more information at churchonthemove.com/inmotion. We hope you do something this week that brings you and the people around you joy. See you next time.